All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get this show started. Welcome to this thing. My name's Tiger, and I'm going to talk about three powerful or profound self discoveries that can, maybe improve every area of your life. And I'm just going to talk about these things because these discoveries blow my mind. Whenever I take a moment and sink into them, it always brings me to this place of stillness where I'm just like, holy shit, that's true. And I can see so much of the human difficulty is wrapped around me not acknowledging these insights and these discoveries, trying to hide from them. And ultimately, it disrupts my human play because I end up taking the whole thing seriously. Okay, let's dive into this. I've got three discoveries to share with you. And as we go over these, I want to just set a tone a little bit that these words that I'm using, the sentences themselves, they're so much more powerful if we don't just see them as cute spiritual phrases, but we open ourselves up on the inside and really deeply question that maybe if this was true, what are the implications of that? And understand that this is so much more of a heart thing than it is a mental thing. It's so much about seeing something profound that is beyond the mind's ability to grasp, which is one of the reasons I love talking about this stuff, because it points to something that for me is just uncapturable by thinking. And so my intention here isn't so much to give you something to think about, but something to feel into. And that, as far as I'm concerned, is going to be where the real discovery is. The first self-discovery that I think has been the most profound for me is the realization that who I think I am doesn't exist. This is something that has been pointed to for thousands of years along different spiritual traditions and even scientific explorations. But the implications of this can be life-altering in what we might call a positive or a negative way. I guess it's wise to say, with a lot of these things, they often piss you off before they liberate you. All of a sudden, you see through this veil, and what you thought your whole life has just shown itself to be an absolute illusion, which is a beautiful thing because you don't have to carry it around anymore. You can let go of it. But of course, if you rely on that something for your own sense of sanity, to find out that it's not real can be quite disturbing. This spiritual statement, who I think I am, doesn't really exist. Can we just take a moment and just sit with that? Who I think I am doesn't exist. So whenever you think about yourself, that person you're thinking about isn't real. That person you're thinking about doesn't exist anywhere in reality, and it's a complete fabrication of your imagination. And can you see that that's true? Can you see that who you think you are is a narrative in the mind that is made up of thoughts, and those thoughts only exist in your imagination? It's almost like saying the name you have for yourself doesn't really say anything about what you are. Can you see that that's true? Can you see how we use the name to communicate with each other? where if somebody yells out your name, then there's a good chance they're trying to get your attention. But the name itself doesn't say anything about the reality of what you are as a human being. The story that you have about yourself, this character in your mind, is another function like that, where it helps you navigate and communicate, but it's completely imaginary. And the thing that is quite profound for me is when I look at my own human experience, the immensity of thinking about who I think I am thinks about it in a way as if it's real, and thinks about it in a way that tries to protect it. Isn't that an interesting thing? Where we are trying to protect who we think we are, which is trying to protect something that's not real. And you're trying to protect it with more thinking. That's weird. This also points to the spiritual discovery that there is no thought that can touch reality. Anything you think about life is not life. Again, we give names to the trees, we give names to the animals, we give names to the plants so that we can communicate with each other. But those names don't say anything about the reality of what it is. It's like you could look at birds flying in the sky and say, oh, those are just birds. Do you see how you're just seeing your name of that thing? You're not really seeing the miracle of birds. Or when you look at a sunset, I'm sure you've had moments where you're speechless. And it's like, to say that's a sunset, like, are you kidding me? Do you see what's happening here? Are you looking at the same thing that I'm seeing? This is amazing. This is extraordinary. Just to call a sunset is, I mean, I understand that that's what we call it, but that doesn't do it justice. The mind takes pictures of things and then it confuses the picture for reality. Just like we do in our mind about ourselves, we think about who we are, we get a picture of it, and then we think we're that. But can you see the absolute non-reality of that? Like, it's kind of silly. It's kind of silly that you would take a picture of the sunset and think the picture is the sunset. It's almost as absurd as taking a photograph of yourself and somebody tearing the photograph in half and thinking that something's happening to you. And this speaks so much to the struggle that we have as human beings. Because again, if you can just be still and see this, you'll see that so much of your agitation, if not all of your agitation, and even the suffering, revolves around who you think you are and mistaking that character in the mind for what you really are. And this also just speaks to the human dilemma of just thinking, thinking, and thinking. And then the life we're living is in service to and from that character. Meaning, you're living your life from this temporary picture of yourself that you've created, thinking that that's really who you are. Isn't that adorably insane? You're going about your life thinking about yourself and living as if all of that thinking was true. Now, how much energy is spent on that? How much time do we spend defending that image? Trying to build on that image. And it only exists in your mind. And this blows my mind. And again, these things, you're going to hear them to the degree that you hear them. Like for one person, they might say, "Oh, wow, that's cute." And another person says, "Holy shit." You see it to the degree that you can see it. And the deeper you see it, you can't help but come to a moment of stillness. And you question everything. Like, what am I doing? What's really going on here? What's real? What's true? If the content in my mind isn't talking about reality, what's reality then? And of course, that's the invitation of spirituality, is to get in touch with reality, get outside of the mind and come home to where life is real and true, which is right now. Live your life. Here's the other thing I wanted to mention. And be playful here with me about this. Take a look at this character that you think you are and how much you think about this character. Do you realize that this character in your mind about yourself, nobody else will ever see that character? Just see that. Who you think you are in your mind, nobody else can see that. Now, how much do you think about your character as if other people could see the character that you think you are? And do you see that the same way that you create a character for yourself in your mind, you imagine one, it's not really you. Everyone else you come in contact with will imagine a character for you. That's not really you. Do you see that? The implications of this and how it can improve every area of your life? That's something that you have to dive into for yourself, because if you look at every area of your life that seems like it's lacking in some way, you can be certain that the struggle or difficulty is wrapped around this character. So, something to consider. Put it this way: the more you see that that character is not real, your life becomes a lot less serious and much more playful. Because the seriousness for the human being is an attempt to protect that character, which is adorably insane. And it's beautifully just part of being human. It comes with the experience. It's our innocent misunderstanding. It comes with the deep capacity that we have with the mind to do what we do. But it's also, let's just say, a two-edged sword, where if you mistake the function of the mind and you believe its content, which in a spiritual way is saying, if you worship images, if you mistake your thinking for reality and worship your thinking, you will create hell, essentially. That's my summary of spirituality. Okay, let's move on to number 2. What I really am is already whole and complete. Oh my goodness. There's so much I want to say about this. If you playfully examine the obvious struggle of being human, what you recognize for yourself is that the difficulty is a sense of inadequacy. It's a fear of not being enough. It's the assumption that something about you is missing or broken. And then we spend our whole life trying to put those pieces back together, trying to make it whole. And we think that wholeness exists in the future. Now, again, we're looking at this in the most compassionate way. This isn't an opportunity to judge yourself. We're looking at this in a very lighthearted way that sees it's all just a big innocent misunderstanding. And this isn't just your issue. This is every single human being's issue. It all comes back to this, and I'll tell you why maybe here towards the end, but it's important to understand that your sense of inadequacy, your struggle of not being enough, this isn't unique to you. You're having your particular flavor with it, but every human being is experiencing this dilemma. And we could almost say that it's the only fear that we have is a fear of not being enough or being incomplete. I invite you to take a moment and just look at your journey thus far with being human and see how much that inadequacy has been playing out in your life and creating suffering. And it has been propelling you on this quest of trying to get to the future so that you could one day be whole and complete. And look at how much you've just exhausted yourself. You didn't allow yourself to play. You didn't allow yourself to enjoy this miracle that you're swimming in. And the whole thing just became serious because of this fear of not being enough. Or even beyond a fear of not being enough, thinking that you are not enough. And so the second profound self-discovery, and again, I'm not talking about like a new belief, a new thing to tell yourself. I'm talking about something that is actually true. And that truth being in this discovery is that what I really am is already whole and complete. So effectively, that thing I've been chasing my whole life, I already have it. I just didn't see it. So I invite you to look at the consequence of that discovery. And if it was deeply seen and embodied, how would that transform your experience? And I hope you see that it would just transform so much. Maybe you might not even recognize what it might look like, but you can see the pain and struggle that comes with trying to be enough. You can see it in your relationships. You can see it in your health. You can see it in your attempts to make money and take care of yourself. You see it everywhere. And maybe we don't have to create a fantasy that says it's totally gone, but look at the dramatic minimization of this quest to be enough because you see a little bit more clearly that you're already enough. This is a journey of discovery. This isn't something where we just hear this sentence one time and then we get it. It's a journey of integrating. It's a journey of devoting yourself to this truth rather than devoting yourself to the quest of becoming whole in the future. Well, if anything, I hope that this just inspires a curiosity that creates an openness within you to see this more clearly, kind of point you in a particular direction. What I really am is already whole and complete. Okay, so we looked at who I think I am doesn't really exist. So what am I really? Now, it gets a little bit tricky here because to ask the question, what am I really? I'm not really asking you to think about another character. I'm not asking you to tell a different story about a person you imagine yourself to be. This is a question that invites stillness and openness to feel into the reality of what you are here right now. And we can just do this as a playful exercise. And this is also the point of all spiritual practices, is to bring you home to see this in some way. In all of the meditations that I create, that's the invitation, is just come back to reality, release the imagination, what you think is happening, and see what's really happening. And what we recognize is that the more we get present, the more we recognize that that sense of inadequacy is completely wrapped around that character, the character that's not really here. and the mind is thinking, trying to tend to that character. But that's not where the truth of you really is. Because in this moment right now, without thinking about anything else, there is a reality to what you are that is completely untouched by this world, which is also to say untouched by the mind. And one of the analogies I use to illustrate this a lot is that of the projector at the cinema, where you go to the cinema and you watch a movie. And when you first get there, you're looking at a blank white screen. And then from the back, there's a projector that puts a movie on the screen. Now, as you're watching the movie, you think that the movie is out there on the screen. And it could almost look like there's something happening to the screen, right? It's happening on the screen. But that is just a projection. It's not actually affecting the screen at all. It doesn't matter if there's a war going on the screen. It doesn't matter if you're watching a comedy or a drama. Whatever is happening on the screen doesn't affect the screen at all. What's on the screen is just a projection, and that's the thinking. But the more you think you're in the movie, the more you're paying attention to the movie. You're super concerned. And that's why this first discovery of seeing that who I think I am doesn't exist is an invitation to let go of the movie and get in touch with the screen. Because you see, the movie is like the imagination that's being projected. That's just a story. It's not real. But then behind that projection is this screen that is untouched by the movie. It's not scarred. It's not scratched. It's not even colored. It's just empty. It's whole and it's complete, no matter what's on the screen. And so this illustration is pointing a little bit to the truth of what you are, that there is this stillness to you that doesn't have a story, that doesn't even have a name, that doesn't have any idea or thought about it. It's just presence. And this is so much more real than the imagination. It's like you go to sleep at night and you have a dream and you imagine something that's happening and you wake up and you realize, oh, that was just a dream. Nothing actually happened to me. And this is very much like the life we're living as human beings, where we are having a dream of who we think we are and we think it's happening. And then you wake up and you realize none of it happened. I imagined this character and I imagined things happening to that character. And then spirituality presents a doorway to wake up from that dream. And you start to realize that everything you've been chasing in this life in order to be whole and complete wasn't necessary, because you're already the thing you're looking for, which is wholeness, which is love, which is everything you think that you're missing. It's already here and available. And so play with that one and see where it takes you. Number 3, life or experience is a mirror that shows me how I see myself. And this, again, so profound and helpful, because it completely transforms how I relate to everything. How I relate to my relationships, how I relate to myself, how I relate to dropping eggs, how I relate to things not going my way, how I relate to money, how I relate to life as a whole. What I recognize is that I don't see what's happening. I see what I think is happening, which is to say, I see my projection. I see what I turn it into. And so as I'm looking out, I'm looking through a filter, and then what I see shows me the filter. Does that make sense? We can return to the cinema analogy, where in the cinema, at the back is the projector. Let's say the projector is watching the movie. As the projector is watching the movie, it doesn't realize that what it's watching is coming from its inside. What it sees is to see its inside. It's not seeing something that it's separate from. It's literally seeing its own creation. Beyond the projection, what's really there? There's a blank screen. There's nothing. The blank screen of life is holding space for you to experience your projection, for you to experience your creation, so that you can see what you see. And in this human journey, as being a human being, when you fundamentally believe that you're separate from what you see, life becomes complicated, because then you have to protect yourself from this thing out there, but this thing out there isn't really out there. And the more you see that it's all in here, then I don't need to be scared of what's out there, because I'm just seeing myself. I'm seeing my own movie that I'm creating in the moment. It's almost like when somebody says something, somebody else, you don't really hear them. You hear your interpretation. You hear what you turn it into. This is what I find so hilarious about the experience of being offended when somebody says something. Because when somebody says something that you think is offensive, you're not hearing what they're saying. You're hearing what you think it means about you. It's showing you how you see yourself. It's showing you what you think is real. If you see lack and limitation, then that exists inside of you. Do you see how extraordinarily helpful this could be when you see that it's fundamentally true? And again, this is the important aspect here, because I'm not talking so much about a mindset. I'm not talking about a new belief to take on. I'm inviting you to get profoundly honest with yourself about the reality of this experience. What is really going on? It's kind of like when I have one of those difficult conversations with my girlfriend, it's an opportunity for me to be still and question what's really going on here. Like, what am I feeling? And if there's any sort of emotional disturbance that I'm having, it's telling me that I'm not seeing this clearly. And if I have emotional disturbance, it's guaranteed that my character is wrapped up in the situation and it's trying to protect itself, and it's just not necessary. And so it's creating let's say, a closure where the heart closes down and the ego takes over, trying to protect the character. And it's so obvious that if I were to get disturbed, I'm turning what she's saying or doing into something that means something about me that doesn't really mean that. This is why relationships are a reflection. They're just showing you what exists inside of you. And this is important for the evolution of your consciousness, because the thing that's actually happening here on this human journey is you're healing your perception. You are discovering your capacity to see reality more clearly, which is also to see the truth of life more clearly, which in a spiritual context, it's to see God. It's the same thing. The depth of this understanding, again, not just as an idea, but a holy shit moment, really transforms how you show up in your life and how you engage experience, right? Like, I'm going in this so that I can see what I see. the only thing that I'm going to see is what I put there. Right? I'm not going to show up tomorrow at this thing and experience something outside of me. I'm just going to experience me. No matter where I go in this life, no matter what the future looks like, I'm only going to experience my own inner world. And if there's confusion in there, if there is resentment in there, and again, these are all things that I have towards myself, then those things will be seen on the surface. I will vomit them onto the screen and get a reflection of them so that I can see them and deal with them inside of myself. Okay, those are the 3 big self-discoveries that can, maybe improve every area of your life. I did mention that I wanted to tie this up in some way. The sense of inadequacy that every human being is dealing with. Let me make this really, really simple. And again, understand this is a journey. This is a path of devotion. It's not something that we just say at one time and then we get it. But the fundamental issue that every human being has of inadequacy is only because they confuse the reality of what they are with who they think they are. Look at it this way. If you are believing you are the character in your mind, you are believing you are something that's not real. And so, of course, you feel inadequate. The person in your mind that thinks it's real underneath the surface knows that it's not real, but it wants to be real. And it's taking something that's not real, wanting it to be real, that makes it inadequate. And so the invitation isn't to try harder. The invitation is to see that it's impossible. In one way, the sense of inadequacy is almost like this popular term called imposter syndrome, which is just another way of saying the same thing, where you are trying to make real this image of yourself so that you can believe that it's real and solid. And you'll have times and experiences where it looks like it's true. It'll look like your character is awesome. And you're like, oh, I found it. But give it enough time and you'll begin seeing through the illusion of that. And you'll have to go chase another something to get that thought back. It's almost like chasing compliments and running away from insults. If you believe the compliments are about you, it's simply believing that thought can define who you are, which means you automatically believe that the insults are about you too. And so it puts us in this dance of chasing compliments and running away from insults. But the only thing you're running away from is imaginary content in the mind that doesn't have anything to do with you at all. And this is what cracks me up about human beings. If somebody says, oh, Tiger, I like your baby blue t-shirt. And if I feel like good and special about that, do you see how insane that is? It's adorably insane. Like that has anything to do with me at all. Your liking or not liking of something that I'm wearing is completely for you. You're experiencing your own projection of what you like or don't like. Do you see how that has nothing to do with me at all? In the same way that if somebody says, Tiger, I love your work so much. It's so incredibly helpful. Thank you. You're amazing. They're not really talking about me. They're talking about their experience with themselves or with life as a whole. In a spiritual way, we could essentially say they're thanking God and they're not really thanking me. And the more you see that, then when people give you praise, you just let it pass right through you and go straight to God. You don't have to get all entangled in it. In the same way, when people don't like it, right? It's like you're allowed to have that experience and it doesn't really have anything to do with me. I can still love you. I can love you whether you like it or whether you don't like it. If you believe that it's about you, the compliment, do you see how there's this fear of people not liking? And this takes so much mental energy. We think about this shit all day long, what people think, and no one's thinking about you. You're thinking about your character in your mind, thinking that other people see that character. What do they think about this character? No one can see the character. There's nothing to think about. It's not serious at all. And then, of course, as you see that, you recognize, oh, wait, I can just play. I can do what I do, not because I'm trying to make myself whole and complete and get other people to like me. I can do what I do because it's my highest joy to do what I do. My work is an expression of art, so it's like I'm painting. I'm not painting so that other people like my painting. I'm painting because something in me loves to paint. It's what wants to happen through my being. You get it? The more clearly we see, I am not who I think I am, and again, not just as an idea, but to really see that, it sets the tone for a deep dive into a completely different way of showing up in the world. So, yeah, I invite you to pull back that curtain beyond who you think you are and see that you're already whole and complete, and see that this life is a journey to experience your creation wherever you go so that you can begin creating something that reflects a deeper truth of what you are, which will be some flavor of love. It'll be something beautiful because the truth of what you are is profoundly beautiful. If you could get away from all the mind noise that wants to compare your character to somebody else's character and wants to use some sort of socially conditioned idea of what is beautiful or not beautiful. But if you step back and see the reality of what you really are, just like you see the reality of life and nature, you say, oh my God, that's beautiful. So are you. If you really want to take a deep dive in this, and I'm just putting it out there, I do have that course, 30 Days of Conscious Living. And it's 15 minutes for 30 days. And sure, take 45 days, whatever. But dive into that. Spend 15 minutes with me as I take you through, let's just say, a structured process of discovery, building on one day after the next, and slowly unraveling all of this adorable confusion that sees yourself as separate from life. You might find that helpful. You might. There's already over 1,000 people in that course, and out of 5 stars, it has 4.93. People keep telling me that they're going through it for the second and third time and they're loving it. And that's the thing I love about this type of insight, is it's absolutely timeless, and you can just keep going through it. And I promise you, you're going to have more depth of insight every time you hear the things that I'm talking about. And it will apply to new experiences that you're going through. All right, my dears, I'm going to bounce out. Thanks for playing. See you next time.